Hi class, it's Dr. Lindner. Let's take a look at the muscle histology. There are some key words to familiarize yourself with. You're going to hear the term endomysium, perimysium, and epimysium. So when we look at muscle, muscle is made of fibers. So they're just like this. These are little muscle fibers. And if we look at it straight on, they're just going to look like little dots, little circles. So there's going to be one layer that surrounds those myofibrils, and that first layer, that innermost layer that's going around a group of these fibers is called an endomysium. Okay, but then you're going to get a bunch of those, right? You see a whole cluster of all of these endomysiums, and you're going to see a layer that's going to wrap all the way around the cluster of those. That layer right here, layer number 2, that's the perimysium. Now, one of these clusters or groups is also referred to as a fascicle. So I'm going to put a number 2 next to fascicle and perimysium because they're the same thing, right? The perimysium creates a group of all of these endomysiums, and that grouping is what we call a fascicle. So you can see, I'll put an F. Here's a fascicle, here's a fascicle. All of these are fascicles, all of these groups. But then there's going to be a layer that surrounds all of those fascicles, and that's layer 3, which is the epimysium. Okay. Now we could take a look at it again from another picture, but now bring in the fact that, okay, we've got a bunch of muscle fibers. They're going to be surrounded by layer 1, an endomysium. You're going to get a group of those endomysiums that make a fascicle. And remember, the fascicle is surrounded by a perimysium. So these are kind of like the same. Then you get a group of these fascicles completely surrounded by layer 3, the epimysium. And now, superficial to that, superficial to the epimysium, is what we call fascia. Fascia surrounds everything, not just muscle, it also surrounds your organs, and it surrounds your lymph and your nerves. It really is superficial to everything. If you're a carnivore and you've ever eaten chicken, if you peel off the skin, under the skin, you can see the meat. The meat is the muscle. But superficial to that muscle, you can often peel this thin, translucent layer off of that muscle or meat. That's the fascia. Now you can see that the muscle is attaching to the bone. The part of the bone that it's attaching to is called the periosteum. Right? The periosteum is the outer covering of bone. How does the muscle attach to the bone? By way of tendons. And that's where we learn those terms, origins and insertions. Origins are the more proximal tendinous attachment, and insertions are the more distal tendinous attachment. Okay, so skeletal muscle is made up of many individual muscle fibers, and those muscle fibers are surrounded by an endomysium. A group of those 10 to 100 muscle fibers are surrounded, or they make up a perimysium. Okay, and that perimysium that goes around that is what makes up the fascicle. And then a whole bunch of those fascicles are surrounded by the epimysium. Okay, now we spoke about the endomysium, the perimysium, and the epimysium. They're going to extend through the muscle, attach to the periosteum of the bone, and attach to it by tendons. Remember, tendons are what attach to the periosteum of the bone, but they're inelastic connective tissue. Okay, they don't have the best blood supply. Now, when we have a broad, flat tendon, you're going to hear the term aponeurosis. Aponeurosis is just a broad, flat tendon. You'll see it linked to the lats. When you look at the latissimus dorsi muscle, you're going to look at the origin of it, and it's going to say the thoracolumbar aponeurosis. When you look at the biceps brachii muscle and you look at the insertion, you're going to see it's a broad, flat tendon, so sometimes they'll call it the bicipital aponeurosis as the insertion. Okay? And you heard me use the word fascia. That describes that fibrous connective tissue beneath the skin, and it surrounds all of your muscles and all of your organs and everything. Okay, good place to take our next break. And when we come back, I'm going to get into something called the neuromuscular junction.